The COVID-19 pandemic has been a reminder about connections between public health, the environment, and racial or social inequality. In the current disruption, what used to be normal looks more like a result of human decisions in the past, calling for human intervention in the future. To give us an idea of what that could mean for environmental concerns in Boston is our guest from the Conservation Law Foundation, the Vice President of Communications and Marketing, Carol Gregory. Thank you very much for being with us, Carol.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you looking into this topic. Very important.
Carol, now that we've joined the Zooming crowd here, how has the pandemic shifted your focus at CLF?
I don't know that it's shifted the focus so much as exposed the need for us to be looking at this holistically. The pandemic has disproportionately impacted communities of color and low-income communities, much like the climate crisis has. It's impacting people whose health was already burdened by environmental injustice and environmental pollution, also burdened by the pandemic. So I think it's exposing something that we know and that we have to address. The injustices, that fact that brown and black communities disproportionately are impacted by environmental pollution as well as the pandemic. So I think it's just exposing the fact that we have to address that. We have to, and I think we are at a tipping point right now in how mainstream environmental groups, which have been predominantly white and continue to be predominantly white, have to address these issues.
Well, it has long been normal, at least in this country, for people with limited incomes to live in areas where the air quality wasn't as good. There was a report about what that means in the greater Boston area, but now it looks different. So what do you do with that picture?
I don't know what you mean by it looks different, but
Well, it looks different in the sense that it doesn't look so normal anymore because we say, wait a minute, they live there because other people made decisions about where they can live.
exactly. I think what we're looking at is that you're seeing where, most incinerators, most oil tankers, polluting facilities are in neighborhoods that are predominantly people of color, low income people. And when you look at some place like the Seaport, which people have access to the waterfront, and you look at something like East Boston, where they're cut off from their waterfront from facilities like the Exxon oil tankers and polluting facilities, the relationship with the waterfront is completely different. And then you bring into that the health impacts from those industries being there, and you see the difference. And I think that has not changed at all.
Well, you mentioned the areas where people have less access to the waterfront. There are places in Boston where there are more barriers to that. Which ones are you concerned about?
I think, as I just mentioned, when you look at places like East Boston, Everett, and the relationship with the waterfront, but also very concerned about the Seaport and how the wealthy have kind of blocked it off from access um, to everyday people, to me, and to people who are not living on the Seaport, who can't afford to live there. And I think that it's a real missed opportunity. The Seaport really could have been, our legacy, our way to really celebrate the diversity of what is Boston, but instead it's mostly overpriced chain restaurants and stores. You don't see a lot of people of color or diverse things to do there that make it exciting and vibrant. And I think as a result of that, they're leaving money on the floor. And what's really discouraging for me is you don't even know. We have a law that protects our access to the Seaport, to the Boston waterfront, but the average person doesn't even know where those areas are. Why wouldn't the city go out of its way to make it known that these are public spaces for you to enjoy? We want you to get here. We want to make sure that there's public transportation so there's easy access for you to enjoy the waterfront. But instead, it's just become a lot of wealthy condo owners that are not making people feel very welcome.
And I guess it could also mean missed economic opportunities for people to tap into some of that
Big
wealth.
time, big time. It's a huge missed opportunity. This could be a place that is really vibrant and alive, and where I want to go and spend my money, and I want to go and spend my time, and I want to bring my family there and enjoy the outdoors and enjoy green space at a time where we really need that during a pandemic. Imagine if people actually realized they could go down to the waterfront and enjoy those areas. So it's an extremely missed opportunity. It's very short-sighted.
By the way, talk about how important it is because you mentioned during a time of pandemic to get out and take a walk in a place that is at least somewhat pleasant, not too uncomfortable physically, at least. Why is that important? Let's say somebody in East Boston, you're raising a family on a very limited income and you're going crazy in the house. How important is that for people of that kind?
It's extremely important, and it's extremely important to have some sort of green space in your neighborhood that's easy access where you can go. Imagine, I can't even imagine being a parent right now with kids in the house living in the inner city and trapped in the apartment, and the need to really get out and breathe some fresh air and have a place that's safe, that's accessible to you, where you can go out and play and just breathe and enjoy. And there's just so many neighborhoods where there's just not enough green space. And when you look at space that should be accessible, for example, on the seaport, it's hard to get to, and many people don't even know where those areas are because there's just it's not welcoming. There are no signs out to say, hey, this is your space, come and enjoy it. And then there's the problem with the transportation to get there for many areas like Mattapan and Roxbury.
Well, one thing CLF has been concerned about for a number of years is air quality, how that relates to traffic, burning fossil fuels. Now that we've been warned about how this overlaps with COVID-19, what should be happening in the future?
I think what needs to be happening in the future is that first, the foremost, that we really need to be investing in renewable energy. Fossil fuels are a thing of the past. It's, we've got to be moving towards that. And we need more than just the goodwill of, leaders to do that. We really need strong climate laws to make sure that's happening and that we're enforcing those laws. We realize that the climate crisis is a serious crisis, and we have to really be moving, fast tracking solutions to that. And the way that we do that is we can't come to those solutions without inviting the very people that are impacted by that pollution. So we need people at the table when those decisions are being made. We know our communities better than anybody else. And so we really need to make sure that as we're coming up with these solutions that people are at the table, and that's not happening right now.
Well, I do remember last year there was a turnout for a climate strike on City Hall Plaza. It seemed, I guess, a disproportionate percentage of suburban students came in. They're always welcome, of course, but it gave me the impression that are there people in Boston who are not that concerned about this, or is the way that people are mobilizing around the issue, is it something like that that needs to be improved?
First of all, I think that's a complete false narrative that people of color do not care about climate. Absolutely care about climate. I think some of the problem is really with mainstream environmental groups. It's in who they're talking to and not reaching out. It's in not listening to people who understand their communities and understand what needs to be done. It's the fact that we're not organizing. We have to actively listen to people who say, hey, I know the solutions. I live in this neighborhood and I understand it. And I think one of the reasons that I came to work in Boston, I moved to Boston to work with Conservation Law Foundation, is because this is an organization that is working on a community level, that's working on a regional level. And these are advocates that are actually working within the communities. They live in those communities. And I think that makes a huge difference. They know their legislators are sitting at the table with residents because they are fighting for their own neighborhoods and for their own communities. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And that's not to take away from what national groups are doing and ringing the bell. We need it. We need all of that energy, that collective energy. But I really like working with a group that's focused on the regional issues and focused on them town by town, state by state, neighborhood by neighborhood.
Well, you're talking about a field of advocacy that has, I guess, for a long time been predominantly white. I mean, what was it like, going into that?
A little lonely, and puzzling. I really don't understand it. I don't understand, but one thing that I'm feeling a lot of hope now, because I've been working on environmental issues. I don't want to age myself, but let's just say, over a decade. And haven't seen a whole lot of difference in terms of leadership, in terms of mainstream groups and who's working there. But I'm starting to see that people are recognizing that when you look at how the demographics are shifting in this country, environmental groups cannot afford not to make sure that they're diverse, not just in the issues that they're working on and not just the communities that they're working with, but who's on their boards, who is sitting, who's at the table, who's on the staff. That's extremely important. And I think it's not sustainable to continue to just talk amongst this small group of people. And until you start expanding the, opening the tent, so to speak, to include more than just, white people, you're just not going to be very relevant to what's happening today.
Well, we should mention CLF is definitely relevant, and you've got a social media presence. So if people want to tap into that, what's the best way for them to do so?
I think one of the first things you could do is go to www.clf.org, sign up for our newsletter. That way you'll be getting all the information from us of when you can take action. Certainly you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, whatever your social media, Twitter, your social media of choice. We've got a lot of things where you can get involved, a lot of things that you can do. So please, 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 reach out to us and we will keep you busy for sure.